Good morning everyone, and welcome to the Sabi Sands here in South Africa. We are on Djuma Private Game Reserve, and a very lucky place to be driving around, especially at this time of the morning. There's often a lot of life that happens at night when we're asleep, and we've just found some tracks actually of a male leopard that walked down this road last night. And just to recap, we've been having some great leopard viewing over the last few days, some really interesting stuff. They've been mating leopards, and the tracks of this male, I'm fairly certain, are the same tracks of a male leopard that was seen mating with the female leopard. And this female leopard was actually seen walking down this road last night with Brent, the other presenter, but the male wasn't around, so he's possibly still following her scent trail and interested to do a little bit more mating. We're not too sure. Either way, interesting stuff. We've got some great news. Andrew is back on camera, so he's back with me now, on the back with me, and he's been on leave for a couple of weeks, so he's recharged and very excited to be back out here. And Nikki's in final control. Brent and VM have got the morning off, and hopefully this afternoon we'll have our second vehicle back up and running. It has been broken since Sunday morning, but it's difficult to get things fixed out in these remote locations, and at least today we'll hopefully get it fixed. Andrew actually bought the part we needed all the way from Johannesburg when he arrived yesterday, so there's some good prospects for having the second vehicle up and running. Now, this may seem bizarre, but instead of following the leopard tracks, which continue down the road to the left there, I am going to veer off and rather go and have a look at the hyena den sites. As I've said, we've had so much great leopard viewing over the last few days, we've kind of forgotten about the other animals out here. It's not that we've forgotten about them, and it is difficult to decide what to do when there is great action around. Even if it is with one specific species, it is certainly worth trying to make the most of it, because it's not always going to be like that. There'll be periods when we don't see leopards. So regardless, I thought it would be good to try out our luck at the hyena den site. It's an awesome place where we have had some incredible sightings of 3 young hyena cubs and their parents. So we'll head off there to start. And over the last few days there have been a lot of people going to the hyena den site, but it simply hasn't been active, and when the adults aren't there, the cubs don't come out. So there's nothing we can do about that, but we are going to try our luck this morning. It's a cloudy day here, so not sure how long it will last. The sun can often come up and start to burn the clouds off, but for now we have complete cloud cover, and that'll mean it'll keep us nice and cool. Morning, Jackson, Scotcha. I'm going to check them Nisikaya. Those tracks of what look like Mvula heading south on Philemon's Dip, possibly following Kwatile. But I'm on Philemon's Katla now, heading towards the den site. So we were out all on our own until just a few minutes ago. Taxon on another vehicle with guests has started his morning drive, and for those of you who are new to the Safari Live experience, and there are new viewers every day, so welcome on board firstly, and secondly, it's important to understand that it's not just us out here. If it was, we would really battle to find lots of animals. We need to work as a team, and we do that with the other rangers in the area, and the radio is a vital tool for us to be able to communicate and share between one another, and also discuss routes and plans so that people can try and spread out and search in different areas. Also, just a reminder for everyone, from Thursday we will be starting to work off a slightly different time schedule, and essentially we will be going out half an hour later in the morning, so starting out 6:30 Central African time, and in the afternoon we'll be going out an hour earlier, so 1500 hours Central African time. And the reason for that is to try and kind of capitalize on the daylight hours and not be spending too much time out after dark or in the morning, not driving around when it is still dark. And looking forward to that change in time. It should open up a few avenues for us. We will still have a little bit of time with the spotlights after dark, and if anything really exciting is happening after dark, we can always extend the broadcast, but the general slots will be changing slightly, so half an hour later in the morning and an hour earlier in the afternoon. And something else for the newcomers, it's an interactive safari, so this is live and it's happening right this second, and you can ask us questions from wherever you are in the world. So send your questions through either on Twitter, and you would hashtag Safari Live, or you could send it through to questions@wildearth.tv. And Nikki in the final control room will try and go through all the questions. There are hundreds that come in, so it's difficult to answer everyone's, but Nikki will filter through and choose questions and relay them to me on an earpiece. Go ahead. Yeah, it doesn't matter, you can try. I think you should try. Welcome back, everyone. Just to let you know, I have, sorry, there's a lot going on here. Okay. Well, welcome back, and as you can see, the sun is trying its best to poke through the clouds to the east, but not yet. There are some beautiful colors out on that horizon. And we're just a couple of minutes away from the hyena den site, and you haven't missed out on anything. And again, apologies for the technical issues. We're not sure what's going on, and it really is fascinating how from day to day we encounter so many different technical difficulties, but understandably there's a lot of intricate technology and machinery that goes into getting a live feed from where we are right this second to wherever you are sitting all around the world. So it is what it is, and apologies for that. So on our right, we've got the sun, it appears to be popping up, and we're just going to take a moment here to watch that. So as you can see, it was slightly delayed this morning by that bank of clouds. Beautiful. And now that the sun is getting higher, we can expect a lot of life to start up. It's been fairly quiet, as you would have heard over the last little moment as we sat quietly. But already I can begin to hear the birds start to increase their calls, and everybody's going to begin to wake up. And we are going to continue down to the hyena den. Which is between us and the sun right now. Thankfully not too far away, but it is down to our right. So the hyena den site was active in November, and we got some great viewing then. But then over kind of December and January they moved off to another den site, and then in early February they returned here. So again, we've been enjoying some great hyena viewing here at the den site. But they do move their den sites, and I'm hoping they haven't moved off from this one, because it's been a few days now since people have seen them here, but it simply could have been unlucky timing. That does happen. It doesn't look like there's anybody here this morning. Now there's a lot of variables. Obviously they could, like I say, have moved den sites, and they will do that in order to try and find a cleaner home. Essentially the parasite build-up and excrement build-up becomes a bit unhygienic, and over time they will move out and then allow Mother Nature to naturally clean out all of the excrements. And that's the entrance to the burrow that Andrew is zooming into now. And also the parasites will move off if there's nothing for them to feed on. So they do move den sites, hyena, and often it's not too far away. So that's the one possibility. The other possibility is simply the adults are out, lying below a leopard in a tree, waiting for tidbits of meat to fall out, or still looking for food on their own, possibly even hunting. Texan not active. Den sites not active. Negative, I did not try that one. Copy, thanks. Okay, anyway, Tex in the other vehicle, he was interested in coming here, said he's going to go and check out another den site that they used to use, just to check that they haven't moved there. So that's great, and again, just an example of the teamwork, and by him going and checking now, that means we can go elsewhere, which is great. Now, where exactly we shall go, I'm not too sure. I'm tempted to head to our northern boundary and check it for any tracks of lion. We haven't had a great amount of lion sightings over the last few weeks, although the sightings that have been seen have been really good ones. Brent had an incredible sighting, a beautiful big male lion walking down the road and roaring loudly straight towards the vehicle as he passed. So that was one of the highlights. And we also actually had two lionesses roaring below two leopards that they had chased up a tree. It was the same mating pair of leopards I told you about earlier. But other than those two sightings, we haven't really spent a lot of time with lion over the last couple of weeks. And it was actually two prides that were joint feeding on a giraffe that one pride had killed. So the Nkuhuma pride, which is a pride that we see fairly often, and they managed to kill a giraffe, and the Torchwood pride, which is a pride we don't really see, came in and started feeding on it with the Kuhuma pride. But they finished that giraffe, and the Kuhuma pride were last seen heading down towards us, heading south. just got a question through from Sandy in Indiana. Good morning, Sandy, and welcome on board with us. Sandy is interested to know if we see any brown hyena here, because she hasn't noticed any. The den site that we were just checking was for the spotted hyena, also known as the laughing hyena. So the reason for that, Sandy, is that this is not an area where brown hyena are commonly seen. I think there have been 1 or 2 sightings in the Sabi Sands, but they occur in other areas of southern Africa and Africa as a whole. And I'm actually just going to take this opportunity to get out my little mammals book and show you the difference between the spotted and the brown hyena, and also their distribution. Okay, so we'll start with the spotted hyena. So this is who we were hoping to come across this morning, but didn't have any luck. And if you just pan up to the distribution map on the top left, please, Andrew. So they occur throughout southern and central Africa, a hugely wide distribution. And now I'm going to page over to the brown hyena. Which has a very similar build, but different coats and different patterns. The one on the top is actually a striped hyena. So the striped hyena you only get in North Africa, and the brown hyena only in certain parts of southern Africa. But they prefer very dry areas and open savannas. So this is typically too thick for them, and they occur in parts of South Africa like the Karoo and drier, more open areas. This is too thick and almost not too wet, but we do get a very high rainfall here usually. Not this summer, sadly. But I hope that answers your question, Sandy. Sadly, we are just not in the right place to see them, and I've seen very few of them in my life. They're not nearly as common or well populated as the spotted hyena. You'll notice every now and then I just poke my head over the side of the vehicle, and I'm just making sure I'm not driving over any tracks of interest to us. There were some hyena walking down this road last night, and hyena's tracks can look fairly similar to lion or leopard at a glance. And also an animal called the civet, which is almost, I guess, kind of like an African raccoon, and a nocturnal animal that we don't get to see very often, sadly. Which leads to a point of discussion that's worth having a chat about. For animals to be understood and viewed, and for people to come out on safari and have a good time and therefore go back home and tell their friends to come on safari, you need to be able to see animals. Now, in order to see animals, there has to be a degree of habituation. Otherwise, all the animals will just run away from the vehicles rather than tolerating them. So the civet just kind of brought that to mind, because wouldn't it be wonderful if somebody could invest the time to try and habituate the civet and spend a lot of time with them, so that if we do come across them at night, they aren't scared of the vehicle. Naturally they are, because we don't invest hours and hours of sightings with them. They don't raise their cubs with us nearby, so that the cubs from a young age get exposed to the vehicles. Like an animal like the leopard and lion, for example, that we do really focus on. So it is something to bear in mind, that habituation of animals is critical for us to be able to enjoy them, and for them to therefore be able to showcase their beauty and increase awareness of trying to protect areas for them. So some people, you know, may have the impression that we get too involved and interfere with the ongoings of the animals, and yes, I think it's fair to say there is a slight amount of interference. But if you look at the lion and the leopard that have been viewed as they are being viewed today for over 50 years in this reserve, they seem to be doing okay. So I don't think we are impacting negatively at all, and if anything, showcasing their beauty. And it's in showcasing their beauty that people become more aware of them and will therefore hopefully have more of an inclination to protect them. So Andrew has just spotted a red-billed hornbill, and you'll notice it did have a very clear red bill, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to reverse it, but it looks like it's just flown down and is planning on doing some hunting. Oh. No. The bird's going to be... Okay, copy, great. I'm not sure, is that then also okay for 2 vehicles? I'm happy to wait until you're done. Copy, thanks very much. I would like to do that. Go ahead. Just got a question through from Renee in Tennessee. Good morning and welcome on board. Renee would like to know whether we see any serval in this area. And the serval is a nocturnal cat, very, very pretty. It kind of looks like a miniature cheetah to a degree, you could say. And yes, we do get them here, but they are very rarely seen. And again, it's not an area where they are very highly populated. There are other reserves within South Africa where you may see lots of them. And that's another important thing to bear in mind when coming out on safari or choosing your destination you'd like to go to on safari. You'll find that most different places all have their slightly different benefits over one another. Here the leopard viewing is some of the best in the world, but the smaller animals are you know, the sightings aren't great. So there are areas where you can go where you would be more likely to see serval and honey badgers and aardvark. So this is sadly just not one of those areas, but that's not to say there's not a chance of seeing one here. There's also a very pretty nocturnal, well, not necessarily strictly nocturnal, but another beautiful small cat called a caracal or a lynx, which is also seen in this area but very infrequently. Turn around here and try my luck. I've seen some yellow-billed hornbills, and what they were doing was they were using a free heating service from a termite mound. Now, the termite mound is just over to our right, and I noticed that the hornbill a little bit late, but what it was doing, it was sitting on top of one of those little columns of earth that the termites have built incredibly with their own saliva and mud. And you'll notice a small hole at the top of the closest column to us. There are other holes, I'm guessing, on other angles of the termite mound that we cannot see. But out of that big hole is coming warm, warm air that really is phenomenal from the hive of activity within the termite mound. And it is a byproduct of the decomposition of the cellulose that is getting broken down by fungus that is essentially farmed by these termites. And that's where most of the heat is coming from, but it really is something that's great to watch. And I was hoping the hornbill was going to fly back to the warmth of that turret. But mark my words, as it does start to get colder in the mornings, we're going to see a lot of birds sitting on these termite mounds. And who would have thought that the birds would have access to a free heating service in the early hours of the morning in winter here. So there are certain luxuries out here in the wilderness. You've just got to know where to find them, I guess. So, good news. We've just got a message through from Texan on the radio. And it does indeed appear that these hyena have moved inside. So, really interesting. Where we now? February, March, we've just got into April. I'm not sure exactly where we are in April, but that was basically 2 months, just over 2 months that they spent at the one den site before changing across to an old one that they have used in the past. And again, just to reiterate, that would simply be to get to a clean, fresh start. There's been nobody living there for a few months, and Mother Nature would have naturally cleared that out of all the parasites and excrements. The decomposers would have come in and done their business. And now the hyena can move back to an old home, got a fresh start. So we are no longer heading north to look for lion tracks. We'll leave that up to somebody else. And that is the beauty of being out here. There are other vehicles driving around checking, so if there are any other interesting updates, we will hear them over the radio. Go ahead. Such a wonderful time of the year as the vegetation begins to thin out, as it currently is at a rapid rate. It becomes easier for us to search the top of termite mounds or the branches of marula trees for animals like leopards, and it's something that I really get excited about, is spotting leopards up trees. It's nothing better than seeing that silhouette of a head or a tail dangling down. So that is somewhere where you can keep an eye out as we're driving along. Now, this is interesting. The crime scene in front of us. There's been an accident here on the road. It looks like it was an elephant crash. And it looked like it had a head-on collision with this small acacia tree. So, what we're going to do is try and clear up the accidents off the road so that other vehicles can continue with their day. As you can see, it's not easy. We can do better than that. Whew.
Nice work.
Wow, I put off more than I could chew there. Got a little thorn along the way. But I am certainly happy to have to jump out the vehicle and get a thorn on my finger every couple of days in order to drive around an area where there are elephants pushing over trees. Texan, I'm driving Gari Main from Triple M, so I'll check for any sign. Okay, so the radio chatter's just picked up a little bit. People are finding animals over various parts of the reserve, which is great. Sounds like a nice and busy morning. But something to bear in mind is for various reasons we are limited to a certain area where we can drive. And even though we may be hearing updates of animals in areas adjacent to where we can drive, those updates might not necessarily be useful information for us, but it is still always useful to know where the animals are, even if you can't go to them, just to have an idea of where they're moving. So we're taking a bit of a roundabout trip to get to the new hyena den sites, and the reason for that is because rather than driving the same roads that I know have already been driven this morning, it'll be more beneficial for us to check other roads for anything of interest along the way. There was some wildebeest running down this road last night. Go ahead. Copy. Can you just remind me about that? Get there. Okay, well, yesterday and all the excitement that I had in the morning with a male leopard who had his aardvark kill stolen by some hyena, and that kind of got in the way with a tree quiz that we had started. And just to let everyone know, the tree that I did quiz you all on yesterday morning was a green thorn, or also known as a torchwood tree, and they are beautiful trees. I'll look for another one. They're not very common in this area, so I won't be able to show you one immediately, but you can now either check your answers and know whether you were right about, oh, there's just some leopard tracks here. So you now know that it was a green thorn or a torchwood tree, and I'll try and show you one, but I am just going to check these leopard tracks quickly. It looks like female. Maybe even Andrew can show you this one. Doesn't work. Can you see it? Or?
Yeah.
So that is the track of a female leopard, and I'm going to go back to the track now and show you whether it was its left or right paw and the way in which we can determine that. So it's going to be difficult for you to see, but my right hand, my fingers fit into the toe, whereas my left hand, it doesn't quite work. So that is indication that this in fact is the right paw of the leopard. It looks like the back paw. I'm just going to check on the side of the road as well. Well, interesting. Sadly though, she's crossed into one of these adjacent properties where we are not allowed, but I will just call in the track so everyone is aware of what's going on. Nkonzo for Mafazi Ingwe, cross south from Gari Main Shabam Junction. Hard to tell who that female leopard could have been. Interesting things do happen here against the norm, and that happened just over the last few days when we had a female leopard in this area who we had never seen before, and all of a sudden she was deep into Karula's territory mating with Mvula. So these things against the ordinary do happen. It could be her tracks heading back south to where she originates, or does have her own territory. And she came down this road on her way, so we're kind of going back on the track that she came on, which is interesting, but nothing more than that. So either her, which is a leopard called Kwatile, or another leopard who is dominant in this area called Karula. So those would be my two guesses. However, we are quite close to Karula's western boundary of her territory, so it could have been one of Karula's daughters called Shadow. So animals' territories do overlap, and there will be exceptions to the norm, but they typically do spend time in fairly well defined areas. But naturally, when leopards get older and wiser, their territories increase, and when they become too old, the territories may decrease, and this will be an ever-changing thing. It's not a set territory for a whole animal's life. I just love the fact that we know at some stage last night there was a female leopard pacing down this road in the opposite direction to where we're going, and you can just let your imagination run wild as to what she may have come across in the night. Now, I wonder if it is the same female leopard that Mvula was mating with, and Mvula is the dominant male of this area. I wonder if he's not lying up at a waterhole and got tired of following her. And we are approaching a waterhole just ahead of us here, so there is a chance that we could bump into him here. It's a huge speculation. His tracks were heading in this direction though, the same direction that she headed in last night when she was last seen. Oh, look what we have here. I found an interesting little character dangling above us in the middle of the road here. Beautiful. So this is a golden orbweb spider. Now, even though they're fairly large, and what I can try and do is just get my hand behind it quickly. Well, that may cause it to run out. So that'll give you an idea of the size. It's not small. How's the angle there, Andrew?
It's good. It's also popping the color of it. So.
Yeah, cool. So, beautiful golden orbweb spider. Thankfully not venomous, but quite large. And they form no threat to us as humans. And this one's got his web built right across the road. And it looks like she's doing some maintenance. Now, I know this is the female because they are bigger and more impressive than the males. There is a male up to the left of the female. And if you can try and somehow get them in the same shot for a comparison. Oh, yeah, there we go. Thanks, Andrew, great work. So the male is the tiny little spider on the top left. And the female is a beautiful big one. And the male will be cautious of this female because if she gets half a chance, she'll eat him. So it's something that the males have to bear in mind when wanting to mate with the females. Obviously they are driven to mate with the females, but at the same time they know that they could get eaten. So interesting scenario to have to work with or deal with, that of the male spider. And she seems to be now on her web now. She was coming across from one of the foundation lines, and this is the main area. You can see some remains of old insects that she would have already fed on to her, or to the left of her. Good. Seems to be fully relaxed now, and we will move on. We're a bit far, but these yellow-billed hornbills have been calling, and it really is a great call to see because they do this funny kind of dance move with their wings. If we just give it a moment or two, we may see them perform this strange call again. Here we go. Perfect timing, Andrew.
I know.
So that wasn't a full-blown one. I think a little gust of wind came and blew it off balance there as it lifted its wings up. But they can really go for quite some time holding their wings up above their heads. Here comes one more. Let's see if he does a proper one. He or she, not hard to tell from here, or from anywhere really. The hornbills are difficult to distinguish between male and female. Other calls you can hear while we sit and wait. Oh. Wonderful. There have also been a few go-away birds calling. Quack, you would have heard. Cape turtle doves, fork-tailed drongos. Here the go-away birds go. Quack. And the hornbill again is warming up. So all the birds are slowly coming to life. Sadly, they don't have the sunniest weather at the moment, and they tend to increase in intensity as it does get sunnier. It is very dusty at this time of the year. It's getting very dry, and it does mean that the cameraman every now and then has to That's better. That was a proper shot. Wonderful. But as I was saying, it will require Andrew and the other cameramen to have to do the occasional wipe of the lens. Let's see if we can show you the go-away birds. They're not too far from us up ahead. It would be great if you could see the bird as it's calling. It'll be difficult with the sunlight, but we will be able to get you a good silhouette. Don't fly. Okay, you can fly. Oh, well done, Andrew. Why are all these go-away birds making a racket here? What do they know that we don't know? Are they just having a general chit-chat? Doesn't seem to be that they're alarm calling at anything. Typically, you can hear when something's alarmed, it shouts and it's urgent, whereas this is kind of quite relaxed and not too intense. It appears to me that it's simply some banter between the different go-away birds in this area, and there do appear to be a lot of them. Another one calling in the tree above us, but it's far too thick for Andrew to even attempt to get the camera onto it, sadly. Welcome back, and a huge apology for the technical issues we've been having. We're not entirely sure what's caused the problem. Anyway, we're back up and running, and that's great news. And we found ourselves a great opportunity here to show you a bird we don't see very often. Now, as Andrew zooms in, you may notice, especially if you're a regular viewer, that this is not a familiar bird to see. And I know it did cause some confusion when Brent asked the viewers to identify it the other day. I won't do the same, I'll let you know. And it is a purple roller. Now, we also get the lilac-breasted roller in this area, as well as another cousin of the rollers, the European roller. It does appear, though, that all of the European rollers, which, as their name suggests, spend time in Europe, they have already started their migration back up towards Mediterranean Europe. They just came down to enjoy our summer. This individual, though, is here year-round. It's not migratory. They're just not very common. But just like a lot of the rollers, they are very, very pretty.
Is it safe to say that the color of the purple color is not popping because of the light we're having at the moment?
This is a very good point, thank you. As Andrew has just brought up, because there's very flat white light and no sunshine, it's very difficult for you to get the true colors of this animal, but in better sunlight it certainly will be more spectacular purple than the one we are seeing now. So thanks for highlighting that, Andrew, because a lot does depend on the lighting, and that's for obvious reasons. I'm going to take this opportunity to show you the whole family of rollers that we get in this area. So I've got my book out. So, starting right at the bottom and on the left, that is the purple roller that we are currently looking at now. And this picture does suggest that in better lighting we will notice more colors on the bird. And up to the right is a really beautiful one that we don't get here, sadly, the broad-billed roller. In the northern Kruger, about 100 miles from here, you will see them, and even closer by in small pockets of the Kruger, even south of where we are, you can find them, but very small pockets. Then in the middle, we've got the racket-tailed roller, again, very beautiful, quite similar to the European, however it has these incredible tail streamers that you will notice, and that again also northern Kruger. There's that really impressive racket tail, and then the two at the top, the European and the lilac-breasted, both of which do occur here, but as I did mention, the Europeans have already started their migration back north, whereas the lilac-breasted rollers are still here. So 5 rollers in total that you get in this general area. However, we only typically see 3 of them here. Wonderful. Maybe we'll have one last look at it. It, interestingly enough, has used this perch on more than one occasion, and I've seen it here, I think this is the 4th time. And it is common for especially rollers to choose and find these more suited and better platforms or perches to hunt from. And even though it doesn't seem very active now, if it were to see a grasshopper or another small insect in the field below it, it would then be able to swoop down and gobble it up. So it's strategically relaxing, waiting for some potential prey.
I also see its beak's got a bit of a hook.
Exactly, exactly. Now, the beak is hooked, and like most carnivorous birds or predatory birds, a hooked beak will aid in catching prey as well as tearing prey apart as they may feed on it. Typically, though, birds will swallow their prey whole, but it is useful certainly for gripping prey, and a lot of the prey that they catch may need to be killed before they swallow it, and that hooked beak will help secure the prey while they often wallop the poor little insect against a branch in order to kill it. So our plan, and it was just a few moments before we got to the hyena den site, was to go there. So we are going to head back to the hyena den site and see if it is active. It was active when we did go there. We were hoping the signal was going to come back, but it didn't, so we've had to come back to camp and assess a few other things. We had to wake up VM a little bit earlier on his sleeping so we could get the expert out onto the job. So VM got woken up slightly earlier than he would have liked to. But he also came and helped us have a look at everything just to make sure everything was in order. And nothing appeared to be the issue, so possibly just something to do with the satellites or the wavelengths causing the signal to drop. Now, on our right, we have some very white pieces of dung. And as Andrew did just mention, it's hyena dung. So there's nothing quite like it out here other than the hyena dung, so you cannot get confused between it and any other form of dung. It's typical of hyena for various reasons, and the reason why, mainly why it's so white, is because they process so much bone content, or so much more bone than any of the other animals can digest and or even feed on. So the hyena's jaws allow them to crunch through bone, and on top of that their digestive system allows them to process it. So it's the high calcium content in their dung that causes it to turn white. It's initially a greyish colour when it's fresh, but then after a few weeks in the sunshine it bleaches white. And worth having a look at, seeing as though this is the animal that we're about to go and see. So as I was saying, the den site was active. There was 2 adults and 1 cub that we could see, and hopefully they'll still be there. Other than that, though, it's a quiet morning here on the Djuma property. There's not too much else to report. I've been off the radio, Game Drive radio, for a while now, and I did get an update just before we went live again, and the other vehicles informed me that there's not too much going on. And just to recap, for those of you who may have joined more recently on this broadcast, the hyena den site that has been active since February up until now appears to have been changed. So they've moved from that one, which is down to our right, about a mile away to the right, and it's currently been repositioned probably about a mile from where it was to where we are going now. So we've got that to look forward to. And I'm really looking forward to spending some time watching these hyena. It's been a few days since we have got to view them for various reasons. There's been a lot going on with other animals to look at, and whenever there have been gaps or opportunities to go to the hyena den sites, they haven't been around, so our timing's been off, but that can happen out here, and we've got no control over what the animals do, and they tend to vary the program quite often. So even though a lot of them are animals of habit, they can all keep us very surprised in terms of what they do. Now, I'm not driving quickly, and the noise that you may hear of the wind is actually the wind. The wind is picking up, and we've been experiencing some interesting weather over the last few days, and I'm hoping that some of this cloudy weather and windy weather is actually going to lead to a little bit of rain. And this is typically not very good for our broadcasts, as we cannot actually drive around in the rain with all of the equipment and the camera. So it means a break in broadcast, but it will be very, very necessary or much needed by the vegetation of this area. It's quite dry, or it's abnormally dry for this time of the year, there should be a lot more moisture around, and the vegetation should be a lot greener. As we go into winter, we would expect it to become like this, but the state that the vegetation is in now means that the herbivores are going to have a tough year. Now, this is great for the predators because they'll have lots of weak prey to feed on. It does mean that a little bit more rain now would be appreciated by not only the plants but also the animals that eat them. It is not our rainy season now though, and as we go deeper into winter we will expect less and less rain. Our main rainfall comes in the summer. Okay, the noise you can hear is that of a tree squirrel, and it's not a happy tree squirrel. What it's seen, I'm not too sure. I can see a francolin on the ground, which means maybe the tree squirrel can see the prey or the predator, whatever it may be, but the francolin cannot. The francolin seems calm. And that's no surprise because the squirrels are elevated and therefore often have a much better vantage point. Now, what makes it tricky for us is that the squirrel could be alarm calling at a mongoose, a bird of prey, a snake, and or a leopard. So it could be something very big and of interest to us. Or it could be something small, not necessarily none of interest, but very difficult for us to find and see.
How good is the squirrel's eyesight? I remember meerkats could see birds of prey in the sky that we could hardly see with the naked eye.
Yeah, no, I'm sure their eyesight is far greater than ours. And as Andrew just asked, how good do I think this tree squirrel's eyesight is? I mean, in terms of how much better than ours, I wouldn't be able to know, but definitely considerably greater than ours. I've often thought it would be wonderful to have one in a little cockpit elevated out at the back of the vehicle or even somewhere up in the front, and it just sits there with a little bowl of nuts while you drive around and eats its nuts and looks for leopards, and when it sees one it lets you know. So you could have that on your vehicle, a tree squirrel to help you spot things on the vehicle, and you could also have a bird of prey circling above you doing a funny display when it sees something below of interest. That's often what I think about on the quieter drives when we are battling to find animals, how we could better use the animals of this area to help us. Of course, it's only a joke though, because we wouldn't want to have to take the squirrel out of its natural, not take it out of its natural environment, but impact on its life so that it thinks it's a human, because that's not how it's meant to be. Go. We've just got a question through from Ramey on Twitter, and good morning, Ramey. Ramey is interested to know whether hyenas will move their cubs in the morning or afternoon, during the day or the night. And it's a great question, Roman, one that I've actually asked myself but don't know the answer to. So I'm not sure, but I can almost guarantee that it'll depend on the individual hyena and the circumstances that they might be moving in. It wouldn't surprise me that they would move them both during the day and at night. Essentially the risks are the same. They could bump into any predator whether it's day or night. So hard to say, but definitely worth debating and discussing. And what I will do is I'll look in.
Well, I just want to add something. I was here when they carried the pups from here to the other den, and that was in the day. So
there we go.
that's all I can add.
So that's some great insight from Andrew, who actually managed to film them moving the cubs, and it was during the day, morning or afternoon drive?
Ooh, I can't
Hard to
remember.
tell.
It was
Either way.
one cub that carried off down that way.
Okay, so there's a good example, but I will have a look in the book and see if they do shed any more light onto that, but I'm sure it'll be a combination of day and night. Good. Now these are just the entrances to the burrow of the new den site. What is the new old den sites? But there's nobody here anymore. They've moved off, and they were lying up just at the entrance to that burrow that Andrew's just filmed past. They were lying just there about half an hour ago. So sadly they have moved off, but that's not an issue. We'll be able to come back another time, and that means we can go and look for something else now. So how wonderful that Andrew was here to actually see them being moved, and therefore knows that this specific clan of hyena will move their cubs during the day.
But if you think about it, lions are more active at night, so it may be riskier to...
Exactly. So Andrew has just brought up another point. So a lot of the other predators are more active at night, typically, and therefore moving during the day may be a safer option. So, it's a good example of how luck and timing, which we have no influence over really, can affect and influence what you see out here. It wasn't long ago, not much has changed. It hasn't gotten hotter, the weather stayed the same. It's in all likelihood more the fact that the adult hyena have had enough of the cubs suckling, and they probably want to go to sleep. The mother of the one cub that we did see suckling was extremely full-bellied, so she had a successful night out, either hunting for herself or stealing prey, in all likelihood from leopard, which is their main target in this area. So now I'm going to drive a road called Ingwe Alley, and it's a road that's been kind of developed since we've been here. It used to be a small track that you could drive down from either this road that we're going on and another one that runs parallel to it. The squirrel's still alarm calling here, so I'm going to just go for a quick walk, and it sounds like it's tired. It's been calling for so long that it's become tired. So I'm just gonna stop. Let me just stop Andrew down here, where at least he can film around and he's not so closed in. And I'm gonna go for a quick walk and see if I can find what it is that is bothering the squirrel. So I'll just be a moment or two. Don't go anywhere, and we will see you shortly. Sorry everyone, Scotty's behind me, I can't film him at the moment.
You can see how dry this waterhole is. 2 weeks ago the elephants were here, but not anymore. I can see you sneak up there.
Yeah, I was sneaking up on Andrew, and sadly nothing to see, which makes me think maybe there's a snake possibly in this tree close to the squirrel that it's incessantly alarm calling at. That's all I can kind of conclude, but it was worth looking around, because if the squirrel had been alarm calling for a prolonged period, and it was irresistible to go and at least have a look around to see if we can establish what it was seeing. So, back to the plan now. We're going to be checking Ingwe Alley, which is a road that wasn't a prominent one until we've moved a few logs so that it could actually connect between this road we've just turned off now and another one that runs parallel to it. And the reason why we were spending so much time here is there are 2 young male leopards that spend a lot of time, or did at that stage, spend a lot of time in this area. And their names are Kunyuma and Quarantine. They're just over 2 years old now. And you'll probably see them more than any other leopards. Well, we have over the course of the 5 months that we've been filming here. And that is why I would like to come here, just to see if there's moving down this road that's called Leopard Alley or Ingwe Alley. Ingwe is the local Shangaan name for a leopard. I'm hoping the elephants are going to come back onto the property soon. It's been interesting monitoring their movements over the last couple of weeks. They kind of just tend to come and go overnight, and maybe not overnight, but they are all of a sudden here, and every corner you drive around you see elephants, and then overnight they'll disappear for a few days, and then just as quickly as they disappeared they'll return. So they're just about due for a return, I feel. This was one of the logs we had to move in front of us. It actually blocked this pathway. So nothing serious, but we did move that log out the way a couple of weeks back. Thus opening up Ingwe Alley to Twin Dams Road, which is the main road that we'll be popping out onto shortly, and then we're going to follow Twin Dams Road to Twin Dams. Go ahead, Lex. Copy, thanks very much for that, Lex. The den site is inactive now. Ah. We have some buffalo that we have stumbled upon, and I'm glad it is while we were in the vehicle and not while I was off on foot as I was a few moments ago. They certainly do command respect, these guys, and as Andrew zooms in on them, you will notice that they will stare quite intensely at you when they're not entirely sure of what our intentions are. And look at the character on this individual's face. Real old bull. And there's an oxpecker cleaning in its ear. Oh, you'll see the bird. It's a young oxpecker. It would have been born just a few months ago, but it's already knows the ways of the wild and where to find its food. And its food that it's seeking out are blood-sucking parasites called ticks. So they provide a huge service to the buffalo in removing these parasites. Although sometimes the buffalo understandably prefer them not to be digging inside their ears. And as you can see, it's already drying up. And as the months go on, these buffalo will have a harder time finding food and will therefore lose condition. And the individuals that do lose condition considerably will then be targeted by lion, and we can expect the lion to almost trail buffalo and target buffalo as the winter draws on, because they do become a lot easier than when they are fully loaded up with nutrients as they are in the summer. They can be very dangerous for lion to hunt then. But for now, these big old boys certainly have nothing to worry about. They would have had many an encounter with lion in their life, and
on the left front leg, is there anything there, or is it just...
Let me have a look through my binoculars.
Is it like almost abrasion there?
Yeah, it's hard to tell, but it is a big old boy and he's got lots of scratches and scars, but there was certainly something that looked a little bit interesting on his front left leg. The noise you can hear, that's almost kind of a robotic chime. Well, that's probably not the best way to describe it, but the noise you can hear is a pair of fork-tailed drongos, if some of you were wondering what the bird was in the background. And now the buffalo is surprisingly allowing this young oxpecker to dig in its ears, and the reason why I can tell that oxpecker is young is because it lacks the red beak that it will grow into as it matures. So this is the red-billed oxpecker that we get predominantly here, but you do get another one called the yellow-billed. Andrew, if you don't mind zooming out a little bit, it's quite interesting because the marula tree behind this buffalo is where we did share one sighting with Kunyuma, one of the young brothers who spent time in this area, and he was up in this marula tree, the big tree that you can see behind the buffalo, with the duiker kill. And some of you may remember that drive. We I was on camera with VM, and VM had actually suggested that we come and check this road one last time. We had already checked it twice during the drive, but he said let's go and check it one more time and see if we don't get lucky. And it was at that moment that we came around the corner and there was Kunyuma up in the tree with only a few minutes left of the broadcast to go. Go ahead. Okay, well, we're going to leave these boys to it. Sorry, Nikki, I was copying you 1 out of 5. Just move a little bit and see if you don't get a better feed. Just got a question through from Dennis in Spain. Good morning, Dennis. Dennis is interested to know how should you react to a predator if you come across it on foot whilst looking for them. And that's difficult to say because each predator and each scenario will be different, Dennis. But in general, you should always stand your ground and never run. With lions, you should maintain eye contact. With leopards, you shouldn't. And you should look down, look away from them, but obviously still keep them in your view, because how can you not look at something that's charging you? So, or even in that area that's of danger to you. But with lions, it's better to maintain solid eye contact, whereas with leopards, to try and look at them as little as possible. If you come across buffalo on foot, standing your ground is not going to help you. So your best option is either to get ready to shoot the animal and or climb up a tree. Now it can sometimes be difficult to get you and all 6 guests of yours up a tree, and that is when shooting the animal might be the realistic maneuver that you have to do. But thankfully, very rarely do guides ever have to shoot animals, and I've never had to shoot one in all my time, so hopefully it continues that way. But we might want to just go back some. Sorry, we've got some seriously funny, and it's just happened. Let me roll back a bit here. So it was just yesterday that we saw a giraffe using the same technique to scratch between the legs, and now this big old bull's walked over a branch that he could then use as a scratch up, and he was just doing some really funny moves there to get the required scratching done. So yes, Dennis, essentially it does depend on the situation. Buffaloes, though, when they charge you standing your ground, is not going to help. With elephants and rhinos it certainly does, but sometimes, and it's only very occasionally, you can try and scramble for shelter or cover, but you typically don't want to run. And the reason for that is simple, and it's logical when you think about it. Obviously it's your common instinct to want to run away from danger, but when you stop and actually think about it, if a lion was to charge you and you turn around and start running, obviously it's going to think, well, this is good, this animal is scared of me, therefore it is running, therefore I'm going to continue to chase it. Whereas, which is what most animals do when lions chase them. Whereas, even if you're not much bigger than them, we're quite tall as humans standing up, and just psychologically, this lion starts running towards us and it thinks, hang on, why is the person not running away? Do they have something that I don't know about? Obviously, they're not scared of me, so maybe I should be scared of them. You know, they're not used to being confronted and stood up to. So if you do stand up to them, they will respect that and often stop the charge. So that is one reason, when you just break it down and think about it logically like that, you don't want to be running away from anything, simply to psychologically try and overpower them and say, hey, I've got this. On the other hand, another way of looking at it is that if you do run, and even if you're the fastest human on the planet, most animals out here will outrun you, and that is even if you are the fastest human on the planet. So there's no way of escaping these animals, even though they can be big. Don't be fooled. Elephants and buffalo and rhino can move incredibly quickly, and trees that you may think would slow them down simply erupt and explode and disappear as if they were not even there. So don't be fooled by lots of small vegetation. Elephants and large animals like buffalo will plow straight through it on their way to get to you. So bear that in mind. Running is not a clever option. They will catch you, unless of course you are very close to some cover and you don't trip on the way getting there. Okay, so just 15 minutes left. Let's hope we can find something exciting to show you to make up for the lack of broadcast earlier. It will be just in a couple of minutes that we'll be arriving at a dam, Twin Dams. And I'm hoping there's going to be a little bit of life there. And just one last time before I forget, if you have tuned in a bit later on this broadcast, just to let everyone know, we will be changing the broadcast times from this Thursday, the 9th of April. And the times will be half an hour later in the morning and 1 hour earlier in the afternoon. That means 6:30 a.m. Central Africa time. We start our first drive for 3 hours, and our second drive will then commence at 3 p.m. Central African time for again 3 hours. So there's no length in broadcast change, it's simply the starting times of the morning and the afternoon safari. Some tracks heading down the road. They look like they are hyena. I don't know what it is about windy weather, but it typically makes for bad game viewing. The whole morning out around us on the radio airwaves, it's very quiet, and that's often on these windy, overcast days. No changes, Texan. And Texan, one of the other game drive vehicles, he's just got back onto the radio after being stopped for probably around 20 minutes to half an hour for his morning coffee break. And it's very civilized out here on safari. During your game drive, you'll stop and have some tea and coffee and maybe muffins or fruits, just to stretch the legs and enjoy the environment in which to have a cup of tea or coffee. And that's in the morning. But in the afternoon you do a similar thing, you change the beverages to whatever it may be that you like, gin tonic or whatever it may be, to close off the day with. And he's just got back up from his morning coffee break and asked because there has been nothing to report. Copy. Again, it's important just to slow down at road junctions. Make sure that no animals have either entered onto a road that you're traveling down or moved off it. So that was what I was hoping to find there, but again, nothing of major interest to us. There were some hyenas tracks heading both down in this direction and another set's heading back behind us. What tracks we typically hope to find are that of elephants. That would be something that would normally track down. Lion and leopard, wild dog and cheetah. Now, the two that I said right at the end, wild dog and cheetah, are uncommon here, but we would still be able to notice their tracks and certainly make a big effort in trying to track those specific species down because they are uncommon here. And it's been a few weeks now since we've seen wild dog, and it's also been a couple of weeks since we last saw a cheetah, but thankfully it's only been a couple of weeks since then. Before, it basically took us 5 months of filming here to see our first cheetah, so they are not common and we don't see many of them here at all. So 1 in just over 5 months is the ratio we're working on at the moment for the cheetah. But we certainly have made up for it with some incredible leopard viewing. That has been our most viewed big cat here at Djuma, and interspersed with some very good lion sightings, but not nearly as commonly as we see the leopard. So let's stop here. There's a heron hunting behind, or very close to the buffalo that you can see there. We'll just keep an eye on it and see if this heron can't provide us with a kill. So it's a grey heron that you can see. That's number 1, closest to us, the tallest, biggest one. Then the one you can see drinking now is a starling, and it looks like a greater blue-eared starling, and just up of the greater blue-eared starling is not 1 but 2 blacksmith lapwings. So they've all lined up quite well for us. Oh, there was also Cape turtle dove right at the back that just flew off. I didn't see it until it flew off. So
also right at the back left is a small, like, is that a double-banded plover or something like that?
Yeah, and then a tiny one right at the back. It's just about to go out of the shot. So in the center of the screen now is a 3-banded plover.
Ah, 3-banded plover.
Another starling's now come down to drink. And as it does continue to dry up into the winter, we can expect the waterholes really to be an incredible hive of activity, and they're going to make for great platforms to film from, because we'll be able to simply park and wait and watch and see all the animals coming down to get water. So that's something I'm looking forward to. Even today it's overcast, we can still see a lot of animals coming in to drink. Go ahead. Just got a question through from Riley. Morning, Riley, and I'm just going to reposition slightly. Riley is interested to know if cheetah are ever aggressive towards humans, and typically not. There haven't been any cases that I know of cheetah killing humans. There may have been one or two mild attacks or scratches or bites, but no, especially, and those would normally have been with captive animals. In the wild, if you see cheetah, they will run away from you. Even if they've got to kill you, you'd be able to walk up to them and just chase them off. So no, they're not aggressive to us as humans, and typically don't pose a threat to us. Unlike us, except unless they have been hand-reared or are in captivity, I find it highly likely that they would pose any threat to us as humans. They are designed to run very quickly, and they employ that theory to catch prey but also to get themselves out of trouble. So they're not designed for confrontation, and try to avoid it where they can.
I always hear about lions taking out cheetahs. Why can't the cheetahs run away?
Well, Andrew's just asked that he's heard of lion killing cheetah, and yes, that certainly does happen. All the predators will try and kill one another when opportunity to, and lions sneaking up on animals, and even a cheetah can drop its guard, have the elements that are in its favor. It could be windy approach. The lion may have smelt the cheetah and be walking upwind towards the cheetah. Therefore, the cheetah cannot smell the lion, and they get ambushed. Also, there's often more than one lion in a pride, and that means possibly encompass a cheetah. And even though cheetahs are very surrounded by predators, it's going to have a problem.
So I guess it can't run long distances.
It can run longer than lions.
Is it?
Yeah, and leopard. So it can run fairly long distances at high speed, for much longer than a lion or a leopard could. But the initial ambush is what would get them. So, just one willow bull and some birds at at Twin Dams. So we will continue on and see if we can find anything else. Copy, thanks. And just also to recap and reiterate, we are hoping to have 2 vehicles up and running this afternoon. The mechanic is busy working on it at the moment, and it should hopefully be up and running by this afternoon. So that's something to look forward to. Then it will be both myself and Brent out, which allows us to share with you twice the content than we would be able to with just one vehicle. So it is something to look forward to, and it'll also mean that myself and Brent will mean we don't have to take turns each drive, and that really does help with continuity. If you just miss one drive out here and you come out again, you kind of lose track of how the movements and the animals have been. So it is, I feel, extremely important that when you are spending every single live you can out here, otherwise it's hard to be in touch with nature and what's going on, and therefore deliver a half decent product to you guys. So it'll be good for both of us having full-time access to the bush, and therefore being in on every day. But until then, and we, like I say, hopefully have both vehicles. Until then, it's a big thank you from myself and Andrew, and also a big welcome to Andrew on camera. It's great to have you back in camp, and to Nikki in Final Control, and a final one last apology for the major breakup in signal today. But from myself and the rest of the crew, we look forward to this afternoon's adventure. Until then, we're just going to carry on driving home. If we see anything along the way, we'll stop, but if not, just enjoy the ride. Okay, bye. See you this afternoon.